Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Hannah Berner from Giggly Squad. Have you ever put on a bra that makes you feel like a goddess? Prepare to be obsessed with the Dream Angels Wicked Bra from Victoria's Secret, the iconic brand behind the world's most comfortable bras. And I only wear the most comfortable bras. The bestseller features an innovative sling for perfect lift without padding, and the fit is chef's kiss. Awaken your inner goddess with new colors and super femme lace embroidery. Find out why this bra has thousands of 5-star reviews and counting. Shop it in stores and online at victoriasecret.com.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm the therapist, Tess Brigham. Normally, my sister Brooke would say that she's the attorney, but it's just me today because we did a crossover episode with Shabnam Hofer with the Chai After Dark podcast. So we talked about, we actually primarily talked about the Adnan Syed case. But in the beginning, we talk a little bit about the podcast and documentary Sweet Bobby, which Brooke and I covered last week. So if you're not into Sweet Bobby, skip forward a little bit. But it was a really, really fun conversation. Shabnam is, she's, if you've probably heard her on Little Miss Recap, she's really, really smart. And I just love her thoughts on things. And she's got a great show where they really focus on South Asian stories and Chai After Dark. So go check it out. And if you like this podcast and you want to support us, please give us a 5-star rating and review. You can also subscribe to the podcast, tell a friend about it, spread the word. And if you want more from us, you can go visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Psych Legal Pop Podcast, where we do weekly bonuses and we got true crime and a bunch of other stuff as well. So hopefully we'll see you over there and enjoy the show. Bye. All right. So today we're primarily going to talk about the Adnan Syed case. If you have not heard of this case, you have been under a rock because he was the subject, his case and his false conviction or whatever you want to believe, was the subject of season 1 of Serial, which really is sort of like the grandfather or the grandmother of all podcasts and then true crime podcasts. And I can't believe that was 10 years ago. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Sweet Bobby because Brooke and I covered that last week. And Brooke and I had different feelings about, the main, God, I've forgotten her name already. It's been a week.
Curate,
thank you.
Yeah.
We had different feelings about Curate and all of that. So
yeah,
we would love, Brooke has questions, but I would love to get your take on Sweet Bobby. Had you listened to the podcast?
Yeah, I listened to the podcast and then watched the documentary, and we covered that as well a couple weeks ago. So it's such an interesting and crazy story. And I have mixed feelings too, because, my biggest thing is if someone's in witness protection, why would they be Facebook messaging you? And even if they weren't a catfish,
Mm-hmm.
that's at least somebody that's not very intelligent and or careful with their safety or yours. Right.
Mhm.
So that's always something that's like really bothered me about this. But you know, I do understand that like Simran, the catfisher, she used all these different profiles. And I think it is actually fascinating. And I would love to know how she actually pulled this off and how she actually did it all. But, you know, using all those profiles of this like network of people that she kind of knew, that Kirat and her both kind of knew, to reel her in and kind of keep her manipulated and in this situation. But I did hear your guys' episode, and I think it was Brooke who was saying that, like, you know, if you don't see me in like a few months, I'm out or whatever, right? And I
well,
totally
not
agree
even
with
a few
that.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Have you if a man likes you,
Yeah.
and he's going to find a way to be with you.
Yeah.
You know, well,
Yeah.
And so Tess was kind of, you know, I was very much like, I can't believe this woman. Like, this went on for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And Tess was kind of trying to defend her using this argument of, well, culturally, you know, it's very important that it's a part of our culture and the getting married and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, but still, I'll give her a pass for a little while.
Right.
On that issue.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like I just found it so hard to believe that she could just believe this stuff and go on for so long. And so I was curious to know what you thought about the cultural aspect of it. Would someone really be that desperate to get married to, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a huge pressure to get married, to have family. Like, I think at one point in the podcast, she talks about, you know, until you get married, you're kind of looked at as a kid, which, you know, which I've seen as well. I think all of this, like how extreme that is depends on sort of like your subculture that you originally came from within South Asia, potentially. And then like your, you know, subculture and the way that your parents are and the like community you're part of in whatever, you know, diaspora place you're at. So there's like a lot of variation in that, but it sounds like her situation was very, you know, there's a lot of pressure. But I also think like, okay, so if there's like a ton of pressure to get married, would you be like, let me just give someone forever? Right. Or you'd be like, okay, because you could also go the other way and be like, the first time someone does something, I'm just going to like be done with them because I don't have time to waste. Right. So like it just kind of, I think it's like almost like a psychological reaction. But you could see that with her previous relationship too, because that was like on and off for like 18 years. She let this guy like come back and forth. So I feel like this is kind of her thing of like, just like, you know, not maybe feeling worthy or whatever that kind of is.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, what did you think of her parents' reaction? Because they seem to go along with it for quite a while as well. And you would think that they'd be a little more savvy.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like there's a lot more about this story that we don't know, like what her relationship is like with her parents, what her family's relationship is like with her cousin Simran's family, and like what that dynamic is. I think there's like so much we don't know, because like it seems so they purposely withheld, the mom and Kirat purposely withheld the information about, oh, she's about to get engaged to Bobby from the father, because the father, as like this traditional patriarch, would reach out to his father and be like, oh, let's like, you know, have a party or whatever that is. Right. So, they intentionally, so Bobby kind of manipulated them, Simran, and manipulated them into not talking to the father. But it's just also like, well, you know, the fact that the mother went along with that, it kind of maybe makes me feel like there was a distrust of the mom and the daughter of the dad. Like they couldn't tell him like, hey, this is what's going on and don't reach out yet, or ask him what he thought. You know, it just, I think there's like just a lot of family dynamics missing here.
Yeah. And also their background is this very kind of niche, you know, these Sikh people living in what country was it? In
Kenya.
Yeah, I'd never even heard of that. So this is a very specific group,
Yeah.
a specific community.
And I think that's how she fell for it so much. I mean, I am with you now that I have a little bit of time. I think she wanted this so badly. Yeah. I think she wanted this to work so badly that I think she willfully, right, is, the witness protection stuff. I mean, all of it. Like, I think she willfully, but at the same time, I also think because this Bobby was someone that was part of this community, and because this community is very tight, and because I think that alone it was almost kind of like, well, no one from our community would ever do this. Yeah. Like, why would he, someone from our community wouldn't lie. So I really do feel like that's what they kept going back to, even though if it seemed insane. And what I was telling Brooks, I don't know if you remember this from the podcast, because when we covered it last week, I just watched the new documentary, and they didn't talk about this in the documentary, but I remember distinctly, like, Simran had to apologize to her, and apparently the apology was not very good. Right. And that Simran's parents really went to Kirat and her family and was like, we just need to not talk about this anymore. Like, they really were denying it. Like, they weren't willing to take any ownership of the fact that their daughter did this. They just wanted it to go away. And they totally were so dismissive of Kirat's feelings. And I was like, I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, like they're much more concerned about their reputation and how they look in the community and to other people than necessarily like Kirat's feelings and what happened to her. Right.
And that's the other thing about Bobby too, right? Wasn't Bobby from a well-to-do family?
Yeah. And so I kind of feel like that played a little bit into her giving it more time too, because she felt like, oh, she's getting, maybe this guy that's like a little out of her league. And so she when she let him kind of let the situation go for maybe even longer.
Then maybe she would have. And then again, I just think it's one of those things where you're pot committed. You're it's a poker saying, but it's like you're all in. You're so in that you can't possibly, right? No, I mean, I bet you anything, no one could say anything to her about this guy because she just wouldn't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. And just that all in kind of personality. And you kind of get that sense with her previous relationship too.
Yeah. So. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Huh.
Well, with this catfishing stuff. I mean, I can understand 10 years ago plus even, people falling for catfishing because we didn't know about it. But I just feel like she should have, she knows about catfishing, right? It just seems so odd. But again, I just think she was so blind to everything. So.
I think a lot of times she just like chose to believe it for her own sake,
Yeah. Because if it wasn't true, then you have to face what was the reality, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Well, she was also being very severely manipulated and messed with, these kind of mind games. So, even the most intelligent person is susceptible to that. I think we mentioned this when we were discussing it, that documentary about the Sarah Lawrence students who were, that man completely had control over them within a very short period of time and took these people, these young women and men who were thriving and intelligent and broke them down into just like nothing.
Yeah. Well, and also real quick. I just remembered too, we didn't talk about this, was how, right, that they were on the phone or via Skype together every night for, and I think that was the other thing too, is I think that she was I think it sounded like she was sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And I think that there was some other things happening too. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some other manipulations that kept her in that same cult-like thing when you don't have enough to eat and you don't get enough sleep. That's all it takes, for people to just kind of lose their minds a little.
Yeah. And I think like when people go through vulnerable times, like those kids going away to college or like her coming out of this breakup where, it was after that obviously she got romantically involved with Bobby. I think like, those are in those vulnerable times, people are obviously more susceptible to stuff like this. We like to think like, how would we be? And we think about it sort of as how we would be on our like strongest day. But, everybody has really bad days too.
Yeah.
True.
What I also wondered, this my other question was, did Simran do this with other people? Because, right, you have to, right? Part catfishing is like you're throwing out a net a bit. So did she do this with a lot of the people that she encountered in her lives, like other cousins, other people? And it was like, oh, good, it's taking hold with this one. Okay, great. I'm going to lean in and really focus on this.
Yeah, so there's at least 2 stories like this that they talk about in the Tortoise Media podcast, I think. So I think like for she lied. Oh no, like so one issue I found on Reddit. Apparently people that she went to school with, and it's on Reddit, so maybe it's not true, but people she went to school with were saying that when she broke up with her boyfriend, which was Bobby's younger brother, she told everyone that he died. And then they, like, after several weeks figured out that people saw him and they realized he's not dead, and she lied. And so that was that. And then apparently the real Bobby said that she, when his little brother broke up with Simran basically tried to concoct some story about how she's in the hospital and she's in danger of dying and he needs to come back to her and like that kind of thing. But he ended up not falling for it.
So she's just wackadoo.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's not really getting punished for it. So is she still doing it? Simran's still out doing these things, because it doesn't sound like she got any real punishment for it.
Yeah, she could be. She didn't go to jail.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting part. Brooke, I'd be interested to hear more on like the legal side of like what you thought about this. Is it doesn't fit into like a really good, like a normal crime. They were basically, saying how Bobby has a lot more standing to bring any kind of charges against Simran because she's stealing his identity versus Kira, who was more like of a victim in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the police were telling her, that, the victim was the real Bobby and his wife. But, this is in England, and I don't know what their laws are like. And, a lot of times it takes the law time to catch up with technology. And so I don't know what year was it? I can't remember like how long ago.
It was like 2019, I think, is when they...
Yeah, and maybe at the time they didn't have any laws on the books, and I'm not even sure if I would hope we have them here in the United States to look into that.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure back then there just wasn't, because people, when they get catfished, they're embarrassed. And so they're not coming out and talking about it. And the laws aren't going to change until, the government realizes, oh, this is a problem that we need to address. And we need to maybe, get some laws passed to address this. And so at the time, maybe it wasn't something that anyone thought needed to be addressed. But all these people online, this is happening, not to this extreme. But I mean, even Mary Brown, people all over are getting catfished.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a minute since I've watched a season of 90 Day Fiancé, but there's always at least one every season. There's one that you're like, oh God, this has got to be. And then it turns out to be.
Yeah, and they had a whole show, the Catfish show.
Right.
I don't know if that's still on, but they could make lots of shows.
Apparently there's like an episode of Golden Girls, believe it or not. One of my co-hosts said, where they like catfish her, but it's like over like letters, like written letters. And it's for a short period of time, but like Blanche catfishes Rose. Yeah.
So it's been happening even before
since the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, there must be. I mean, there's got to be like even way back when, before we had any of this technology, before phones, where people were like writing people letters and, my dear Clara or whatever, writes like from the war. Right? There's been some stories of like, someone tells everyone every story and then that person's like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so, or, we're best friends and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I still just don't. I mean, I can understand the catfishing to get a green card. I can understand the catfishing to get money. but this was catfishing to just torture someone.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, I feel like I'm much more comfortable with the person who wants the green card or the money.
Right.
Like your motives are very clear. This is like a sociopath. Like you tortured this. You are now, and she is still being tortured.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, Simran must be getting some kind of like pleasure or like, it's adding to her self-esteem in some way. Cause at that time her career is like, going great, but she's spending like, 8 hours a day, like catfishing someone. It's really bizarre. It's definitely like some kind of strange psychological phenomenon that I can't make sense of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely some kind of mental illness.
But we haven't had, I would love, I guess I have to do some research. I would love to see a documentary where they interview people that, is there a clinic where they're getting these catfishers and they all come together like Dr. Drew or something? We all maybe need to like get a reality show where we can find out from these catfishing people, like, why are you doing this? Please explain it. I just want to know why. That's all I want. So
that'll be our next project.
Yeah. Yeah. Catfish house.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Adnan. So, Shabnam, do you want to give us like a quick synopsis of the case?
Sure. So Adnan Syed's case is about 25 years old, and it's about the murder of Hae Min Lee. So in 2000, he was Hae Min Lee's ex-boyfriend, and he was convicted of murdering her and sentenced to life in prison. She went missing when she was a high school senior in Baltimore County, Maryland on January 13th, 1999. She was last seen driving her Nissan Sentra to pick up her cousin, which she did often, and then going to Lens Crafters where she worked. About a month after she went missing, her body was discovered in Leakin Park in Baltimore, and it was discovered that she'd been strangled to death. So Adnan was arrested on February 28th, 1999, and he was convicted in 2000.
And as of right now, because I was just looking this up, he was finally released from prison in 2022.
Yeah, so he was released from prison in 2022 during a hearing that it was actually like the Baltimore State's Attorney's Office brought a motion to vacate his conviction, and based on DNA and other evidence, and then they brought that. Apparently, they're also required to give reasonable notice to Hae's family, to the victim's family, to appear. And so they gave them 1 week's notice. And then her brother appeared in via Zoom. So the hearing went on, and his conviction was vacated. He was released from prison, and the victim's family appealed, saying that the 1 week wasn't a reasonable amount of time, and they should have been allowed more time and be able to appear in person. And then and then from there, there's just been like a series of appeals, and finally the Maryland Supreme Court decided, like in August, they basically said, yeah, we're going to reinstate his conviction, and we want to rewind the clock so that we want to rewind the clock to 2022 so that you guys, like everybody, has to do over the 2022 hearing, but he could stay out of prison.
Oh,
so
this is still hanging over him.
It's still hanging over him, but he's out with a conviction. It's like really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's no reason to believe that the outcome is going to be any different. I mean, they morally and legally needed to dismiss this case.
Yeah.
And they tried to do that even after the flub with the notice. Didn't they say, okay, we just want to dismiss the charges?
Yeah, they didn't. They could have charged him again, but they chose not to.
Yeah, but then the judge, that wasn't good enough for the judge. The court, the next appellate court it went up to, said, well, no, you can't do that. We got to start all over again and go through the whole. It's a due process thing,
Yeah.
But the writing's on the wall. They are going to now just shore everything up, and they're going to have a hearing where they I think the judge said you need to give more of an explanation of why you're dismissing this case, because they were doing it because they had egg on their face.
Yeah.
All this stuff was coming out about how they never even did any DNA testing. They had her clothing, they had her rape kit.
Yeah.
Just sat on it. And then when it's discovered years later, they do the testing. Oh, there's no DNA from him on this stuff. And it was just embarrassing. All these embarrassing details started to come out. Prosecutorial misconduct, diversity violation, not turning over exculpatory evidence. And it was just piling up. And they were like, okay, we're just going to dismiss this. But now they're going to actually have to have a hearing where all of their mistakes and all of their violations are going to come out and be aired.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
And so this is a good thing. I mean, I know he's in a kind of a purgatory here. Yeah. He's still convicted. He's still considered a convicted murderer.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. But unless I'm missing something, I don't think anything bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be able to put that poor kid back in prison. I just don't think he's out. Like, there's a part of me that feels like he's out. There's just no way they're going to be able to do that. But what's so crazy about it is when you think the podcast came out in 2014, and this was his freedom and the desire for his freedom. And this is all anyone was talking about. And you had so much public interest, and it still took till 2022 for him to be released. It's and this is the part, it made me think a little bit about, there's an expression, right, in the business world, or where you hire slowly and fire quickly. Once you really think about something first before you hire someone, because it costs so much. And then to get someone that's bad, it creates such a havoc. But once it's not good, you got to get rid of them. And we tend to do the opposite. We tend to and that's what it feels like. The courts need to be this. It takes so much time to get someone out when you make this kind of mistake, that the fact that every single person that we've seen that's been exonerated, it's just decades and decades, and it shouldn't be like this. It should not be this long. And I understand, the courts move very slowly, but then maybe there just needs to be a higher burden on us to get a conviction, because apparently the jury was out for 2 hours. They had one trial that was a mistrial, and then there was a second trial. It was a 6-week trial, and these jurors were out for 2 hours, and that's it. The kid's life is okay.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize it was that short. That's incredibly short to put someone away for life.
Yeah. A kid that was arrested at 17. Well, don't even get me started on all of these people that keep trying 17-year-olds and, as adults. It's like, even though they're a year away, they're not adults. They're not.
Well, this was also a factor in this case, I believe, that Maryland, and this is similar to the Menendez case, Maryland more recently passed a law saying that, if you were under 18 at the time of the conviction and you served at least 20 years, I think, that you could be eligible to be released. So that plays into this as well.
Yeah. He served his 20 years. I'm curious if I've always 100%, I've never had any doubt that I've always felt like he was innocent. But I was surprised, Shabnam, you were a little bit like, you weren't sure. I mean, I think we all agree that the case was handled poorly.
Yeah.
And he should not have been convicted, period.
Yeah.
But I always felt like he never, ever made me wonder. Like Scott Peterson, I wonder about constantly, but this kid, not once have I ever wondered.
Yeah, it's so funny because there's so many details about this case, and it's been so publicized that there's almost too much information out there from both sides. And it feels like the more you learn, the less you know, and the more confused you get sometimes. And so I kind of think about this just like Scott Peterson, in the way that it's the Scott Peterson effect, that you can't make sense of it. And so you're like, well, maybe he's guilty, So I think sometimes I get stuck in that, but then when I actually revisit it and I look at things like the fact that there was 4 people's DNA found on her shoes, and they haven't tested, and they didn't test it until 2022, and then it didn't match him. That's pretty significant, And then just all the lies, like all of Jay, the main star witness, all of his lies and the way that the police dealt with him and not recording, like having like hours and hours of pre-interview time that they didn't record. So it's just, it makes me feel like they were definitely the police were definitely trying to build a case directly about Adnan.
Yeah, because this is, all these cases that we talk about where it turns out someone's falsely accused, falsely convicted, whatever, it always leads back to some detectives who say, oh, here's an easy route. Here's a confession.
Yeah.
Here's whatever. And we're just going to go with this. And no matter what other evidence we have, no matter what else comes out, no matter how implausible this is, because we can talk about what the problem was with this Jay guy. But clearly he was a horrible witness and may or may not be telling the truth.
Yeah.
And
I feel for Jay.
But they just go with it and they just hold on to it like a dog with a bone and they will not let go. And they'll just like search for, confirmation bias, search for things to make their case. And it's just so frustrating because it's like, it just happens every single case.
They can't let it go.
People. No,
they can't let it go. Just like Carrot, they can't let it go.
Exactly.
Well, Brooke, what's your thought? Is your thought that do you think he's 100% innocent? Do you think it's possible?
Well, I'm not as intimately familiar with the case that, I didn't follow it or listen to the Serial podcast, but just the little bit of research that I did before today, he doesn't sound very guilty to me.
No.
And there was so much other, like there were 2 other suspects that they had that they just kind of ignored. One of them turned out to be a convicted serial rapist. And one of them, her car was found behind his house.
Are you talking about Mr. S or Alonzo Sellers? Are you talking about him?
I don't know their names, but there were 2.
The guy that was suspects. Peeing and found her body.
Yeah, and then there was also her current boyfriend at the time that she died, right? Don, yeah. Don was the one who tried to use his alibi, tried to make an alibi through his work, but then they discovered that it couldn't have been him because there was some of his time cards that said Don and some of his time cards that said Donald, and it was an automated system, so it wouldn't have done that with a different name and a different and like 2 different employee numbers. And so like that, like his alibi got shot and he was using that as his alibi. So yeah, that was interesting. And then I think you're right. I think Alonzo, the person that found her body, was the one that was the convicted rapist.
Was he? I thought he just exposed himself. I just thought he was that's right.
He went on to become
afterwards. Okay. Well, then there you go. Because what really always hit me about Adnan is, we know if you watched enough Dateline that okay, yes, always the boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend, right? I get you. I understand why you're zeroing in on Adnan. But every single time you would hear some story from one of their friends, like, oh yeah, Adnan got jealous. Or Adnan, oh yeah. Like stories would start to come out about that particular person where they would get very jealous in relationships and there was some abuse, right? This was a relationship where there was nothing, like they had no issues. They just broke up and they're young, she never reported anything about him, period. And that this entire time he's talking to, this podcaster, he's talking to all these people, and the way in which he would talk about things, he just was, you didn't get the sense that he was thinking much about what he was saying, which to me means he's just being truthful, which is like, he's like, God, I don't know. I was smoking a lot of weed that day. And I don't know. I thought it was this and maybe we were there. I don't know. I mean, it really felt very genuine, very, very, and truly genuine in the sense of like, well, why would anyone think me? It's just all of it. It just seemed so real to me. And I just feel like there's just no way. There's just no way that he, without any prompting, without anything, this kind of very casual, laid back guy, the same guy who, when you talk to him, I mean, he was been wrongfully convicted, spent more than half his life behind bars. And you ask him about it, any interview you've seen, he's very much like, listen, I don't have the life that I thought, but I have a life. I mean, just at peace.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like, I understand that if you're wrongfully convicted, you feel all this anger, and I think he does, but I just don't think that he's a violent, mean, erratic person that would strangle his girlfriend.
When they broke up, like, who was it? An amicable breakup? Like, who broke up with who? What do we know? Like,
I think she broke up with him because I think she liked Dawn, right?
Yeah, and I think they weren't getting along, and I can't remember exactly, but I think also that she broke up with him, and yeah, she did like Dawn. Dawn, I think, was a little bit older, and that's the other thing too. Like, Dawn was what, 21? Yeah,
I mean, she was 17.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's weird. Like, why would someone who has a job? Well, one's crafters, but I mean, like, why someone who has a job? Why would you be interested in a 17-year-old senior in high school?
Yeah.
That's just gross.
Yeah.
So, that just makes him seem something.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. But you could see, like, as a young girl, you're like, oh, this guy's like, like older, I think
buy alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Always thinking, Tess. Always.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's, I mean, I can see how a 17-year-old would be interested in him, but it's like, just with the time, you're like, oh, that's that's not great.
Right.
But the biggest, I mean, if you talk about themes with this case, this was very much, you've got two families, both immigrants, both, neither Hae nor Adnan's families knew about the other one, knew that they were in a relationship. Both families were very anti-relationship. And I think this also added to a bit of like Adnan's sort of mental state or what was going on at the time. Because I think he was very used to kind of leading a little bit of a double life. Like, I think he was, I think he was the good kid and he did what he was supposed to do and all that. And he did all that stuff when he was home. But his parents, his parents had no idea he was smoking weed and driving around and cutting class, or dating a girl or anything.
Right.
So I think that's the other element of it too, of him being a little bit casual about everything and kind of like, oh, well, maybe his stories didn't always stick. It was a little bit of like, these two have been pretending, for a while.
Yeah. And I think that maybe the prosecution tried to use that as like, to show that, oh, he led this double life and he's like this dangerous person that leads a double life. But there's like, I think like a lot of children of immigrants that do stuff like that, right? Like sometimes your parents don't know English that well. Sometimes, your parents are very like culturally or religiously conservative. And so there's like a lot of that and you just kind of like go to college and grow out of it, and it's not like this crazy double life type of thing. It's just kind of like code switching or whatever.
Yes,
right.
That's a better way of saying it. I shouldn't have said double life, but I could see how he was just a little bit like, got to sober up to get home. And, he obviously was a good kid. He was doing well. He was thinking about, none of those things, but his parents really, I mean, I think that people would think like you're a senior in high school, you can't date someone who's your own age. And you think that automatically means that they're not going to get good grades. I think that kind of stuff of just having to like, my parents are never, why am I going to try to argue with my parents about it? They're never going to understand. So I'll just date this person, just tell them.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think like for most immigrants' kids, it's like, okay, that's you're 17, you're 18, then you're 19, you're 20, and that kind of is over. Like you kind of go to college and you just kind of like move on and you like grow up and it's fine. You have sort of those like really funky, angsty years of like 16 to 18 maybe, but then it's done, right? But it just, I think this happening at that point in his life also was an odd kind of very intense time of having this like intense code switching / double life type of thing. Yeah.
Well, and going back to like the bad detective work, why in the world does teenagers break up all the time? Why does breaking up with someone lead to strangling them? You know what I mean? I mean, it's without any other evidence, with no physical evidence at all. And, there's a lot of discussion in this case about alibi and where were you? And, it's like not everyone has to have an alibi. I mean, can you pinpoint where you were at every moment of every day all the time?
Yeah.
mean, again, it's just such sloppy detective work and sloppy prosecution. It's like laughable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's all these other people around, all this other stuff. And I thought it was interesting, Shabnam, what you brought up about the technology that's like the cell phone tower pinging is such a huge part of the case. And yet it's in its infancy, really, in technology. And and it's probably all of it is wrong.
Yeah, it was really unreliable. So it's totally unreliable for incoming calls is basically what the fax cover sheet said, but they didn't provide that to the defense, and it was found much later. Like, I think one of the undisclosed hosts found that, the Undisclosed podcast. And
yeah, because I feel like when Serial was happening, that this whole thing came out. Because I think that Serial did uncover some things. I remember the fax cover sheet was one. There was something else. I didn't realize the Asia McClain stuff had been going on since moment one. But I thought that was discovered with Sarah Koenig and her investigation.
Maybe, I could be wrong about that. Yeah, so like it was, and the incoming calls that he received were the ones that pinpointed him at Leakin Park, where they found her body, and those were the ones that were unreliable. So it's pretty bad for the prosecution.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a different time too, because it's interesting because he would lend Jay his car and his phone, right? Like, you don't have your phone. Everyone now has a phone, and everyone now has these things attached to us constantly that, when someone doesn't have their phone or they turn it off, that's suspicious. But yeah, this is a kid who didn't have his phone all the time. Like, how can you even say, just because he was getting these phone calls, like, that doesn't mean that even if that was correct, it still doesn't mean he's there.
Right.
Yeah, unless you can prove he's making those calls.
Yeah, we can't judge it by today's standards.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their cell phone glued to their body at all times.
Yeah. And apparently he just got that cell phone like a few days before the murder, and he was like the first of his friend group to get it. So he was sharing it. So it wasn't even like it was always with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like, now if someone says, "Oh, I left my phone or I turned it off," everyone's like, no, you didn't. Oh, you ran out of battery? Really? But then, you could totally see he could have given that phone to anybody at any time. I mean, Psych Legal Pop, we'll be back after these messages.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like, it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Hannah Berner from Giggly Squad. Have you ever put on a bra that makes you feel like a goddess? Prepare to be obsessed with the Dream Angels Wicked Bra from Victoria's Secret, the iconic brand behind the world's most comfortable bras. And I only wear the most comfortable bras. The bestseller features an innovative sling for perfect lift without padding, and the fit is chef's kiss. Awaken your inner goddess with new colors and super femme lace embroidery. Find out why this bra has thousands of 5-star reviews and counting. Shop it in stores and online at victoriasecret.com.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if we think Adnan didn't do it, how do we explain Jay? Why would this guy give a false confession incriminating himself, and then he went to prison, right?
No.
Yeah.
So he had some other criminal things that happened afterwards, but
so he got like a blanket
we see it
where he got everything went away if he would testify against him.
Well, what happened was that because I watched recently the HBO documentary, the 4-part documentary, and I think that came out in like 2018, 2019. But this was one thing that a lot of people didn't know, which is, number one, the jurors didn't know that Jay got immunity for his testimony. They also thought he was going to get in trouble. But basically, he got a sweetheart deal. They gave him 5 years suspended sentence. So he never served any time. And I personally, my thought is, I don't have anything to back this up, but I think that Jay, everyone said that Jay was a little odd. I think Jay smoked a lot of weed. I think, Jay's a black man in Baltimore. He is 18, 19 years old. He doesn't seem to have a car or, you know what I mean? And I think Jay, was this kid that was kind of sort of selling weed and kind of bebopping around. And I don't, these cops pick you up and say to you, we're going to arrest you for this. We're going to arrest you for that. We're going to do this. And suddenly you're like, oh crap, what do I need to do to get through this? And I think he just started talking out of fear. Mm-hmm. And I think these cops knew that. They knew they had him. And that he did not, it doesn't sound like he has family support. I mean, Adnan had a lot of family support, but and you could see even with the family support that he still was railroaded. Yeah. But I don't think Jay had a lot of support. And I think that he just got scared and was like, okay, I'm just going to, what do you want me to say? I'll say all this. Because I do remember in the podcast, at one point, Sarah Koenig and someone else go to Jay's house. They find him, they go to his house. And I remember her describing him, because here it is, it's like 15 years later, and that how he was almost resolved, like beaten down by everything, just kind of weathered and beaten down, and just like he has been living under this for years and years and years and years. And I don't think he feels beaten down because he contributed to the murder of Hae. I think he feels beaten down because he, made up this story to save himself.
That all makes sense.
That's my theory. I don't know, Shabnam, do you have a different theory?
No, I mean, that sounds right to me. Another thing I remember from one of the podcasts is that they said something about how he would go to his grandmother's house a lot, and his grandmother, like there was like this joke about like his grandmother's not like your grandmother, like there was a lot of crime in that home. And so I was like, that's another sort of point where he could have been leveraged and, potentially given a deal for some crime that he's done there or some other things going on there that would have led to exactly what you're talking about.
Because was he working? Because I think that he was just kind of maybe selling a little weed, just kind of sort of working a year out of high school, still hanging out with his high school friends. I mean, he seemed to be kind of this lost kid, right? Who was always a little quirky.
Right. Yeah. And everybody knew him as somebody that makes up a lot of stories.
Yes. And he was a big, big storyteller. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when they started talking about how, just about how his stories, because his stories were constantly changing, and they were constantly changing based on the evidence. And each time he would go back in and be interviewed again, and he'd have to come up with like a new story because, we got some new evidence. Okay. How can Jay now make it really seem like it's
how can Jay sell this?
Yeah, kind of.
Well, yeah. So I think like Susan Simpson from the Undisclosed podcast, she listened really carefully to the audio tapes, and she noticed that every time he would kind of go off track or kind of hesitate, and he would get silent, and then there's like a tapping sound in the audio tapes. And so she theorized that the police were tapping on the map to like indicate to him where the story needs to go and what he needs to say. And then he would say, "Oh, sorry." And then he would start up again and get back on track with the story he was saying. That was pretty damning, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Did the defense have access to, I'm assuming they had access to that at the
Yeah, I think they did. Did.
That's another issue. This attorney that he had.
Yeah.
Christina Gutierrez.
Well, and that to me feels like, because they did later find out that she died of complications related to MS, that I don't know if it was because of the MS or something else was going on. Like things were falling apart at the end there, that she was really struggling and had done a lot of stuff that was, definitely Adnan had a case for the fact that he didn't have proper representation. Mm-hmm. So I never quite understand, once it was revealed that she didn't follow up with Asia McClain and this and this and this, that's not enough to get a new trial?
Yeah. Yeah. And then apparently her closing statement, which she wrote from her hospital bed, was like talking about like Pakistan and the mountains there and like rambling on about that. It was like irrelevant stuff and things that maybe came up during trial in a frankly like racist way. And like this was, in her closing statement, which she wrote from the hospital. And so it just kind of, makes you think like maybe at that point, again, like another person that needs to let it go and turn it over to someone else,
Well, yeah. And in one of the appeals, like one of the first appeals, Adnan was appealing on one of the grounds was ineffective assistance of counsel. And they brought up the fact that I think there were many things that she did wrong, but one of them was that she didn't, what was it that she specifically didn't use some important piece of evidence in trial. I don't know if it was it the alibi?
It was Asia McClain. Alibi.
Asia McClain.
That's the alibi.
Yeah. And the Court of Appeals said, oh, no big deal. That was just a tactical decision because there's plenty of other evidence to show that he was guilty. And it's like, really? Like an alibi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's at every level. The courts are just very reticent to disturb anything. The rate of success on appeal is like less than 2% or something. I mean, it's just.
Well, and I remember in the HBO, the documentary that I just watched, they were talking about this, where this is a part of the system that's a problem, is that these prosecutors, winning is what they need to do. They need to put quote unquote bad people away. And so there's such incentive for them to be convicting people, right? To get the conviction, just like with the cops, there's no incentive for them to get it right. I mean, other than, I don't know, being a human being. I mean, that shouldn't be such a big deal. But I do think that unfortunately, a lot of these systems, we have to create systems where, the system supports the fact that, you need to be careful and mindful about who you're going to convict and who you're going to, what you're going to do. I just saw recently that, am I getting the name right? Ryan Ferguson. He's a kid that was wrongfully convicted and spent 10 years in prison because his friend had a dream that he and Ryan killed somebody and they convicted him. And his father spent a decade. I mean, he was a white kid who, his father spent a decade like trying to get him out. And he just got awarded something like $40 million.
Wow.
And that's the biggest judgment I've ever seen. Like it's something about, the 38 million of it is in punitive damages, like for the time that he spent in prison. And so it's like, good. I'm glad. Like, you need to scare people into not, it needs to hurt for you to make this mistake and not just someone's life. Cause I think it's very easy for people to be like, oh,
Well, there was this, so in Alameda County where I live and where I first started practicing as a criminal defense lawyer, there was a DA people told me about there who he did nothing but death penalty cases. And, he never lost a death penalty case. And he had literally like a shrine on his wall of his office of like the pictures of all the people he'd sent to death row. And probably had it decorated, you know what I mean? Like it was a shrine. Like, look what I did. Like I sent all these people to be executed. And I've more than one lawyer I know who worked in the DA's office who'd seen it. They're like, confirmed. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen his wall.
Wow.
And it's just, that's just sick.
Yeah.
Because
that's a weird, it's like a weird fetish of like killing people, right? Like,
Because as a prosecutor, your job is to get justice for the family of the victim, for society as a whole. It really shouldn't, it's not about, I want to kill this specific person. Like that's not where your motivation should come from. It should be to do justice and to justice for the victims and whatever. But if you're just focused on, it's almost like a kill board or something, you know what I mean? It's like, you're just focused on on that, I just always remember that and just thought, my God, like, he's doing this openly, and his boss isn't saying anything.
And
No
I'm
one's
saying, and being celebrated for it. I bet you anything being celebrated for it.
Yeah, I think he had a record for the most, death row or, death penalty convictions in the state of California or something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
just really quickly, I just looked it up. It is Ryan Ferguson, and Ryan Ferguson's attorney is Catherine Zellner.
Oh,
who's such a rock star.
Making a Murderer.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Because I think I remember Making a Murderer because she had already gotten Ryan out. And that's why when they Making a Murderer, she was part of season 2. Why can't I remember his name?
The Making a Murderer guy?
Yeah, God.
Stephen Avery.
Stephen Avery. That's it. Yeah. So Stephen Avery's girlfriend at the time, she found her through this Ryan Ferguson case. So good for Catherine Zellner getting him $38 million. I hope it sticks. I hope he collects every dime of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so we have there's the 2 immigrant families. And one of the things that really, was unreal to me, and this came up in the HBO documentary, is, that Adnan's parents got, the minute they arrested Adnan's parents got an attorney. And the attorney showed up at the, at the precinct or whatever and said, I like to see my client. And the cop said to him, well, he's not requesting you. And the guy's like, yeah, because he doesn't know I exist. I was just hired by the parents. He's 17 years old. And basically this guy was just sent away. They basically said, constitutionally, we don't need to let him know that you're here unless he requests you.
That's so fascinating.
And I'm like, is that real? Because I didn't think that's how that worked. I thought the minute the attorney comes in, you have to at least let the person do that. But
he's a minor too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is I just remember that whole situation going, if this was a white kid, in this affluent family, I swear to God, you would have let that goddamn attorney in. But it's like they just, and the parents had a lot of faith that the system would get it right. And of course they wouldn't convict Adnan. And I think that's the other part of it too, is they really, the racism and the just taking advantage of this family. And then this kid, he's 17, you have nothing. Like they just decided, we're just going to treat him like shit.
Yeah, they, I feel like that scene you described is like the scene in so many shows, right? Where like a rich kid gets like a DUI or something and the lawyer comes in that he has no idea about that the parents hired and like gets him off, right? So it's really odd that they weren't allowed access to him.
So what does happen? Let's say I get arrested and someone hires me an attorney. I don't know it and I'm being questioned and my attorney shows up. Don't they legally have to let me know, hey, there's an attorney here for you. Would you like to speak with them? Or no? Or is it not until what they claim was that Adnan needed to ask for the attorney?
I think that's
you don't think so? Okay. So
because I used to go visit people in jail, my clients' jail, and I would just show up when it was convenient for me. Just show up. They didn't know I was coming. They didn't request me. There was nothing that had to be filled out. As an attorney, as an officer of the court, you show up at a jail and you say, I'm representing this person. They have to take you at your word.
Yeah.
So that was just untrue.
Yeah, they basically sent this guy away. And I was kind of surprised too. Like, and then you left? Like, if you're the attorney and you know what the law is and you know that you were just hired and this kid's 17, I mean, wouldn't you be making the biggest stink? I was just kind of surprised he left. I was like, why didn't you just go?
It makes me wonder, like, did the cops tell him, like, oh, just leave. We know this kid did it for sure. Or something. Like, maybe there was some kind of conversation like that. I wonder. But again, even if that was the case, the lawyer shouldn't leave.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. But
the fact that he's a minor, because usually you can't question a minor even like without a parent, at least. And you have to still advise them of their rights and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
but that's the other thing with young people, like with Jay and Adnan, like they just didn't know to say lawyer. Because as we've seen with a lot of these cases, when they're railroading someone, is you just need to be able to say lawyer to show the cops I'm just as smart as you are, maybe even more. You're not going to corner me. But it's always these kids that just don't know any better that just start talking and then
Mm-hmm.
You know, there you go. That's all you need.
They don't know their rights. Yeah, they don't teach that stuff in school. What they should is
they should.
What happens if you you come into contact with the police in any way under any circumstances? You know, here's what you need to know. These are your rights.
And I think that was the immigrant part, like the parents not knowing, you know, the fact that they came to this country, they trusted that our system would get it right. And the fact that they, you know, not knowing. I think if I lived in another country and I didn't understand I was an immigrant there, I don't think I would know either. I would be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they apparently, I heard in one of the podcasts that when the law enforcement first came to their house to get Adnan, they invited them in and they like gave them like orange juice and offered them tea and stuff like that. Cause they just thought like, you have to be nice. Yeah. Like, and you have to be nice, that would somehow be beneficial to their kid and them. And that's not how it works. Right. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. I know. I always told my daughter, you know, when she became a teenager, I said, look, if you ever get arrested, just go, don't say anything. Just go to jail. Call me. I will take care of it.
Yeah. That's what I told Max too. I said, listen, call call Brooke. Yeah. Here's her number. But yeah, I said the same thing to my son. I was just like, if anything ever happens, you just keep saying lawyer, 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 and you call me or you call Brooke.
Yeah.
And we will get there and I will get Brooke to go. We will take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, just don't say a thing.
Don't say a thing.
But again, that is, you know, you've got to, I know that because I've been around lawyers my entire life and I just know that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So, even if you just want to be helpful, you still need to have a lawyer present. Like, even if you want to cooperate, have a lawyer present, you know?
Yeah. And I think like since his conviction in the 2000s, there's been like these huge movements within immigrant communities to have like these like know your rights type seminars so that they do understand that, hey, you don't need to, like, it's not going to help you to serve the officers orange juice and tea. You need to tell them you want a lawyer, right? So just things like that people don't know, right? Because maybe in wherever they're from, that is helpful. Like, I don't know, you know, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that from the perspective of, I mean, people who are born here barely know their rights or the law. So if you come here from another country, how are you expected to know?
Yeah.
To know all this stuff.
Well, and that was the other thing too, which is another issue that I have where, again, you know, we're innocent until we're proved guilty. And the fact that we hold people in prison, in jail before they're convicted just bugs me to no end because, and there was this big thing about Adnan, like he was held without bail and they tried to get bail. The parents were willing to put up their house. There were 3 other families willing to put up their house. The entire community showed up for him and said, we vouch for him. Yeah. But because he was Muslim, because they were like, well, he has an uncle in Pakistan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, so let me get this straight. Like this family is going to, 3 families or 4 families are going to give up their homes and let this kid just run off to Pakistan.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, it's unreal. It was almost like he had so much support and they used it against him. And if he had no support, they would use that against him. It just felt like this kid, he did not have a chance at all. The only way he would ever not get convicted of this if he was in class during the time. Like the only way he would be okay is if 50 people were staring at him.
Yeah. And the fact that they could use the fact that he had a family member in another country as a reason to not give bail, that means like literally every like second, third, until like third generation immigrant is probably not going to be able to get bail. Right. Because everybody's probably got some uncle, at least until 3-4 generations into this country, that they know in another country.
They can just take his passport, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe put him on a no-fly list and like, you know, or watch just all of it. I mean, those cops on the stand in the documentary, so smug, you just want to wipe the smug little looks off their face. They thought they were so cool. They really did. And it almost felt a little bit like they felt like they were, I don't know. I don't know what was going on with them. I swear, I just think they just decided like, let's just get this kid. He's Muslim. Do you know what I mean? It really does feel like they just decided.
This is before 9/11, right?
This is right before, yeah. Okay. But they made a point to talk about like, his culture and his religion and like honor killings and things like that, which doesn't like, it doesn't make sense because it's not even like, and I'm trying to say this in like a compassionate, sensitive way, but like they weren't married, right? So if he was like married to her, there would be some kind of honor like of his theoretically that he would want to protect, but they weren't. She wasn't. They were just boyfriend and girlfriend, right? And I'm not saying like I feel very sad that exists, that there's victims that like that, but even to project that onto this, it doesn't like even make sense. Because there's some right. It's almost like this thing that happens in your culture sometimes that happens like in a lot of cultures, actually. I was going to say,
it's not
that happens in
normal.
the Middle Eastern cultures. I mean, it happens here, it happens in every culture.
It happens here.
They just don't call it an honor killing.
Yeah,
it's more of like, how dare you, lady, get an idea and leave the house?
It's called domestic violence gone too far.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up was, Rabia, who, who's actually a very successful podcaster today. She has her own podcasts and she's done a lot of stuff. But it's really interesting. I mean, Rabia was a family friend who I think was in law school. She was already in law school, right? When
I think
Adnan was convicted.
Yeah, because I think like the way she says it is like, they have this like family friend groups that they were family friends, but he was like a younger family friend kind of thing, like probably friends with her younger siblings if she had any or that kind of thing.
So, and I guess it was, they were all shocked. And then she spent the first part of her career in her life fighting for him.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of it too, is he's lucky that he had her. If he didn't have Rabia, and Rabia was the one that was like realizing like, maybe we should go to podcasts, maybe we should go to the media, maybe we should do this. And she was the one that found Sarah Koenig and found like, okay, she's with NPR. Let me just shoot her an email and see what happens. I mean, she's really the one that got the case on the map, and she's the one that really fought for him.
Yeah.
And kept it together and all of that. And I'm sure, it's given her, she's got a book deal and some other things. It's given her some success. But I do have to say, I give her so much credit for, she's had 3 kids. She's during the documentary, she's pregnant with her 3rd kid, and she's running around like just trying to desperately, find someone to help this and doing that. I mean, she's really been vital to getting him free.
Yeah, I have to imagine that she must have been like really traumatized by this imprisonment and all of the racial, religious undertones that they put on him to be like, I need to do something because this like hit way too close to home, right? I imagine it's probably like partially a trauma reaction too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. As we're recording this is post election. And I saw a post that she made, which was basically, she said, in the process of getting Adnan freed, there were lots of highs and lows, and you got to just keep fighting. She's like, I've been here before. You just got to keep going. Because if you really think about it, I mean, she fought for him for decades.
Right.
Decades and decades. So I read that and I felt a little better. I was like, yeah, you're right.
It's inspirational. Yeah.
Never give up. Never give up.
Never give up. Yeah. You're right. I should not just bury my head in the sand and eat Baskin and Robbins. I need to fight, But I've always found her to be really interesting, just kind of fascinating person. And I mean, the documentary, it's so funny just because I had, in the 4th episode, we learned that Adnan's mom got leukemia. I mean, that was the hardest thing to watch. Like the mom is so, this mother is just, and that's the other part about this family is Adnan's family is they so understand Hae's family. Like they absolutely, anytime they talk about it, they said the real victim in all of this is Hae. We feel, we want to get her justice. We want all of these things. Like the fact that even Adnan's mom, she'd be like, well, I can at least hug my son.
Yeah.
And she can't. I mean, the amount of compassion and empathy, again, that's why I feel like this kid is not a killer. Like the amount of compassion and empathy that they have for Hae and Hae's family and how difficult this is for them, because I can imagine it is really hard. Hey, they feel like Adnan did it. And I understand their position. I do. Because they feel like you took my sister, you took my child, And so in the documentary, we meet Hae's mom, we meet, Adnan's mom. And that's always just really hard as a mother to watch. And, but just like her having to tell Rabia, like, I have leukemia. And then Rabia having to say, you got to tell Adnan. You got to tell him. You got to be honest with him. And the mom being so scared, like not wanting to tell him.
Yeah. That's so hard.
So yeah.
Well, we'll have to circle back after whatever new legal developments happen.
Yeah.
The case. And
it seems like it never goes away. Yeah. It seems like there's always something.
Yeah, because they just won't let this poor guy go free. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like they're not even, we still can't, he's still, hanging on here.
Yeah, well, hopefully soon. I mean, like I said, barring something that I'm just not picking up on, it just seems like they want to make a clear record of what is happening. And, then it'll be over, hopefully. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I'm just saying, is there anything else we missed? Maybe, maybe
think
not.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through all of the notes. What was this about? His attorney, Christina Gutierrez, his lawyer. Were you just when working with her next client, she took money from the client's family for expert witnesses that she didn't deliver?
Yeah, she did. So his case was her last case. And the next client she took on, she took all this money from their family to try to get, she's told them it was to get expert witnesses, but she never delivered. And so they, I think they sought some recourse, and then she ended up getting disbarred, actually.
And so that's the other part too. Why isn't that enough? Right? Because by the time Adnan probably brought his right to, what's the phrase? Right to counsel.
Ineffective assistance of counsel.
Right. When he brought that up, wouldn't she have already been disbarred by then? I mean, or this case would have been happening or something? Do you know what I mean? It just feels a little bit like, it's not like 10 years later all this stuff happened with Christina. It was all very imminent right there.
I think so, because she did die pretty early on, but I don't know how the timeline shakes out to where, what exactly the order of events were.
Because I think I remember they said that she died in 2005. So he was convicted in 2000. So she had to have been disbarred, somewhere around 2001, 2002. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he did bring this up and this hadn't happened yet. But, the case was happening. I mean, if this was the second case she took, it would probably been right after Adnan got convicted.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was, you said this was her last case.
Yeah, it was the last case, but then she tried to take another client. She never tried that case because it fell apart before that.
And so which case was the expert witness where she ripped off the expert witness?
She was taking money from the client right after Adnan for the expert witnesses, but she never delivered them. And I think they ended up firing her. That's what it sounds like from what I looked into.
So Adnan was the last case that she tried. Yeah. So that's the last case that she tried. So my guess would be, right, she can't just wait till Adnan's case wraps up, right? You're always kind of trying to get the new case and trying to get money, right? If you're a criminal attorney, you got to keep, rolling things along. So that had to have been kind of happening that year if this truly was her last case, So.
But that's not related to ineffective assistance of counsel, the fact that she's ripping off her next client.
Or being disbarred?
Well, that was all after the fact. This is all that's happened.
No, I know. I'm saying it's after the fact, but at some point, Adnan brought in, he had an appeal.
Right, but it's only for stuff that she did during his trial.
Oh, okay, got it. So you can't say listen, the person got disbarred right after me here. You don't think this is a problem? Okay, got it.
You have to show that your attorney did something that caused you to get convicted when they shouldn't, not not presenting evidence, exculpatory evidence, whatever it is. And it's directly related to your case. And it's a very hard argument to make because the court always finds, well, okay, even if the attorney screwed up here, there's plenty of other evidence to convict you, and you would have been convicted anyway, even if your attorney had brought this in. And that's basically what they said.
Yeah. Okay. That clears it up for me. Yeah. I understand now. And I understand why you do that, right? Because as an attorney, you can't sit there and constantly be worried.
Right.
There are lots of jobs. I mean, nurses, therapists, like lawyers, like where it's not an exact, nursing, there's more science, but it's not always an exact science of exactly how you're going to do this. And there's always interpretations of things and all of that. And yeah, lawyers shouldn't be scared all the time of like, I'm going to get disbarred if I do this thing. But
you have to be able to like have the freedom to use your best judgment, because that's part of what your training was for.
Yeah.
But then,
and that's why you're selecting someone. I mean, that's
right.
You as the person get to pick who you're going to work with.
Yeah.
If you have that privilege.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it makes me very happy that Adnan is free. And apparently he works, I guess he has a job with Georgetown University. Where he's part of this Innocence Project. Like they hired him there. That's the last that I heard. I found this article that kind of like walks through everything that's, happening, in his life. And I remember this last thing where he was, what he's doing now, because he's back home. He is, let's see, he began a full-time job as a program associate for the Georgetown University's Prisons and Justice Initiative. The Washington Post reported one of his roles is providing support for an undergraduate class called Making an Exoneree, in which students seek to help free innocent people in prison by examining their cases and creating documentaries.
Oh, that's so cool.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
The longer he's out and he shows he can be a productive member of society and he's not dangerous and he's like taking care of his family, I think that just bolsters the case that he should be out.
But yeah, it's amazing how poor police work and just how that small thing, and that's not so small, but how that the ripple effect of how much, we're talking two separate families now. And not even that, we in the documentary, we meet a lot of his classmates and the classmates who testified and, not really realizing what they were testifying to, not getting all the information. And so there's all of these young people that they went to high school with that feel, the ones that testified feel horribly guilty because they feel like I wasn't given. One woman was like, Jay and I just smoked a lot of weed. I don't know. I mean, he told me this story and then they told me to recount it and I told them to recount, I just went into court and told them, but not really knowing like, oh, wait a second. And just their lives are destroyed. It's just this ripple effect of all of these people. Asia McClain feels a tremendous amount of guilt. And then there was all this attention on her in 2014 and, and now she's being criticized by people. It's just everyone, all these people that are part of this, the ripple effect. So anyway, all right. Well, tell us about your show.
Yeah,
tell us all about it and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so it's called Chai After Dark, and we're just about a few months old. We started in the middle of August. We're focusing on South Asian stories in pop culture and entertainment and TV. And so we did a bunch of episodes of Indian matchmaking. And then we also actually interviewed Catfish from Welcome to Plathville. And so that was a fun episode getting to talk to him. And
who's that? I don't watch that show.
Oh, okay. So Welcome to,
I know the show.
Yeah, Catfish is Isaac. So Isaac is one of the sons. When Isaac came to LA, he had a couple of friends, and the two friends were Hayden and Catfish. And Catfish is like this Indian guy. He's an immigrant. He came from India in 2021, and they were kind of like fun friends that were like a little bit of like favorites of the show as friends of. So so we got to talk to him. That was really, really fun. Okay. And we're covering Breath of Fire right now on Max, which is a docuseries about the Kundalini yoga cult.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was
that sounds
another yoga
good.
cult.
Yeah.
Kundalini yoga is a cult?
There was some cults associated with it. I don't think that it's like
all of like if someone's advertising I'm doing Kundalini, that's part of a cult. But okay, got it.
Yeah,
that's how.
Well, it's like that. What was that Bikram?
The Bikram guy as well.
Yeah.
That was a good. I forgot that name. We didn't cover it. I think it came out before we had the podcast. But yeah, I remember that one too.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, so just very quickly, Brooke and I are Psych Legal Pop, and we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. Brooke's the attorney, I'm the therapist, and we cover Sister Wives. We do a lot of Sister Wives. We do a lot of documentaries. We just finished covering Love is Blind. And for us, I think it's just a matter of, things that are of interest to us and that we feel like we have something new or different to say about it than everybody else.
And definitely true crime.
Yeah.
We do true crime documentaries, but other types of documentaries too, not just.
Yeah. Because we've done some music and we've done some, other things, but the true crime and the cults seem to be the ones that people are the most popular.
Those are fan favorites. And the longer and more complex the documentaries, the better. So people love these, 8 to 10 hour documentaries that we sometimes have the bandwidth for, but sometimes we find something a little shorter.
Yes.
I think nothing like a good binge watch for a consumer, right?
Yeah. But sometimes some of these ones can they just make me so angry and so frustrated that I need a minute. I need to walk away from it. So some are hard, especially the cults and the abuse of women primarily. And you're just like, oh my God, okay, how many people can you abuse? You're just like, okay, got it. You're a horrible person.
That's how we're feeling with Breath of Fire. It's a 4 episode docuseries, and we're putting out episode 3 is coming out Monday the 11th, and that one we're like, okay, this is getting really dark now.
I know all these documentaries that are now 4 or 5 parts. I think they're reverting back to 1 or 2 parts. I've noticed there's been more and more things are shortening, which they need to do, because I think just because the person maybe abused a lot of people doesn't mean we need to hear about every story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I love about documentaries is the art form of documentary films is that you do take a lot of information and, a big subject, and you distill it down to something very digestible in under 2 hours, 90 minutes preferably.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I don't know. Sometimes, it's just too much. It's like, I want to know about this and I want to know. And that's good storytelling. That's a talent to be able to do that. So.
It is.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder about these documentary filmmakers, as someone, I've written a book. I think my book was 70,000 words. It was like, it was so many words, and they got it down to, something much lower, but it's just a little bit funny because you think everything's so important. I'm like, I can't cut all this. This is genius. This thing I just wrote and I just did. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. If you're the director and if you're doing and producing it, but when someone else comes in, they're like, oh yeah, who cares about this? They can just cut things down. And you need that. You need someone to come in and say, okay, I'm going to make this 2 hours now. There we go.
Yeah.
So, I understand.
Speaking of cutting things down.
Oh, okay. We got to go.
We're at like,
sorry.
We're at an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much
for
doing this crossover with us. We'll have to definitely plan for another one.
Yeah.
Maybe with the next season of Indian Matchmaking or something like that.
Hopefully,
I've heard that's a good show. So
I've seen a few episodes. It's great.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think we can do all the episodes, just one.
Just one. Yeah. Well, I'll pick a good one.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Everyone.
Hi, this is Hannah Berner from Giggly Squad. Have you ever put on a bra that makes you feel like a goddess? Prepare to be obsessed with the Dream Angels Wicked Bra from Victoria's Secret, the iconic brand behind the world's most comfortable bras. And I only wear the most comfortable bras. The bestseller features an innovative sling for perfect lift without padding, and the fit is chef's kiss. Awaken your inner goddess with new colors and super femme lace embroidery. Find out why this bra has thousands of 5-star reviews and counting. Shop it in stores and online at victoriasecret.com.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Give me a mountain with lots to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and a cool, refreshing mountain dew. So give me my good friends, give me a dew.
Grab some friends and an ice-cold Mountain Dew today.
Mountain Dew.